We're going to do things a little bit differently today. It's going to be a relatively short presentation, but it's going to be one that is based on spontaneity rather than a PowerPoint presentation. It's not a master class. It is really one you can get that master class. What I plan to do with Alex is to interview him as if I was James David and instead of the actor's studio, this is the winemaker's studio. There are so many interesting questions that come from Israel if you have a good chance to visit there with regard to the wine industry. And it's just a compelling place to visit on so many different levels. I was there first in 1976, when the only thing that you needed to know about wine was Carmel. And then in 2000, when I went up to Dalton Winery and did wine and food classes and toured the Galilee, and was completely overwhelmed by dynamism and energy percolating in that part of Israel, and for that matter, throughout the Israeli wine industry. I went back last year to go to the Israeli Wine Expo, which literally presents every wine made in Israel in one place. And I was overwhelmed by the deliciousness and the diversity and how far the industry had come in a very short period of time. People speak of Israel as being one of the cradles of viticulture, and it certainly is historically. But the modern wine industry there is in its infancy. It's incredibly young. It has not really existed in any meaningful way before 1982. And although there were wines made in Israel, the energy and the magic and the deliciousness really started in the early 80s and just effloresced, and now it's exploded with so much dynamism there. And in a country that is no bigger than the state of New Jersey, there are 200 producers. It's shocking. That's almost as many as there are in the entire state of Texas. And the wines that are coming from these producers, whether they're garagistes or boutique producers or mid-sized producers like Dalton, or large producers, you have representations of almost all those in the next room. You get to taste them soon. You'll be amazed at the diversity that's coming out of this small place. I couldn't imagine, I can't imagine any other small wine producing country that is making so many different things so well. And what's your feeling?
I think you're right. I think because of the infancy of the industry, we're just trying our hand at many things and seeing what works and seeing what sticks. The biggest problem in the wine industry is that it takes between 5 and 7 years from inception to being able to get a glass of whatever you're thinking about producing. So mistakes occur along the way, and it takes a while to get traction with good ideas and to commercialize the good varieties and to find a solution for the varieties that don't quite work. I think we're along that way. I think there are varieties that we see that work better. There are varieties that we see that work less well. And I think the industry's beginning to find its feet, especially in the past 5 to 10 years, where many of the larger wineries are beginning to plant their own vineyards and create their own destiny.
It's true. The large wineries have begun to copy some of the behavior of the boutiques and the smaller, more nimble producers, and are coming back to experimentation and innovation in ways that I think will reward everyone. We're going to sit down, and I'm going to pull out a list of questions. James Lipton has them on cards. I have them on a piece of paper. And I'm going to interview Alex, but not as the proprietor of Dalton. He is going to represent all of Israel. And I know that's going to be a tough chart, but if I can beg your indulgence, we'll let you begin. How many of you have been to Israel? One of the, and I'm sure all of you have had Israeli wines. One of the things that's a great challenge when you visit Israel and visit wine producers and different wine regions try to tease out what defines Israeli wine. What's the soul of Israeli wine? Because there's no one grape that is native to Israel that defines it, or even a grape that has been expropriated from another country, like Malbec has been in Argentina, or Sauvignon Blanc in New Zealand, or Carmenere in Chile. Israel still seems to lack that defining grape or defining style. So my first question to you is, what does define Israel in terms of its soul as a wine person?
I think at the moment Israel is defined by its variety. I think the variety of wines that we find coming out of Israel is quite vast, but still mainly French varieties. Still Cabernet is king, and I think Cabernet will remain king because it is an incredibly commercial variety and one that works very well in Israel. But having said that, I do believe that Israel needs to find a variety that it can latch onto, as we've seen found in Scotland and Rome.
Well, where do you think that's going? Do you think it's going to be with a non-Bordeaux grape variety for red wine?
Well, I think Cabernet Sauvignon is inescapable because it sells so well. But in terms of varieties that perform better, we have to look to warmer climates and warmer regions, especially if we're going to look at France, and we have to look at the south of France and varieties that flourish there. We're having very good results with Shirazes and having very good results with Grenache and a lot of the Viognier, a lot of the southern Rhone varietals. And I'm seeing it also judging competitions within Israel, is that the flights of Shirazes that we're seeing are eminently superior, are the superior variety.
So you think that Rhone varieties are going to achieve greatness at some point? You're seeing it now.
I think in terms of enologically they are going to achieve greatness. Our problem is to commercialize that greatness because looking at the commercial realities of the market, Shiraz is not a big seller, especially in the United States.
I think it's the third most widely planted red grape in Israel, though. I know that Cabernet is first and Merlot is second.
I think Shiraz is taking a big part because it works so well in our climate.
Of course, climate is a big deal in Israel. It's a country the size of New Jersey, but it's relatively narrow and long for a small country. How do you coax greatness out of a place that is so small? Is there enough diversity in the climate? Is there enough diversity in the soil types? Is there enough diversity in what one would describe as terroir to give Israel differentiated greatness?
I think so. I think I can speak for myself. Within our portfolio, we have varieties growing on chalk, we have varieties growing on terra rossa, we have varieties growing on basil, and we plant varieties that are appropriate for the soils in which they're going to grow. We manage vineyards closer to the coastal plain, and again, you have to be in the vineyard every day. You have to let the vineyard adapt to the conditions in which they're growing. It's not difficult, but it requires extra attention and extra.
Maybe 20, 30 years ago, the industry had not really developed the cooler climate grape growing regions as they have recently. I mean, there was not much development in the Judean hills. Galilee was only beginning to come into focus. How has the understanding of where to plant grapes changed over the past 20, 30 years?
I think it's defined what varieties are planted where. I think that the higher we plant, the more success we'll have with wine varieties, and the more capable they are of growing and developing flavors because they have a longer growing period because it's so much cooler. And I think there is a greater interest in being more scientific in the approach of planting our vineyards and in managing our vineyards too. There's a great deal of technology now moving into the vineyard, vigor planning, vigor mapping, and planting, and what else do we do? We do vigor mapping, We have pheromone insect repellent. We're using a lot of technology now in order to make the vineyards better, which means when the wines come to the wineries, we'll have less work because the terroir will be able to speak for itself.
I'm wearing some pheromone insect. Find it just a little bit on the pulse points, works quite nicely. Even the coolest parts of this, even in the heights of the Galilee, or the Golan, or the highest points of the Judean hills, it's still pretty damn hot. Do you think that there are places that are cool enough to support cool climate grapes, or are there certain grapes that will never grow in Israel? Will you never make great Pinot Noir or Riesling or grapes that are suited to a bit more temperate climates?
Well, I'll use Sauvignon Blanc as an example, because it is a variety that, had I chosen whether to plant it or not, I wouldn't have chosen to plant it. And yet, planted in the Galilee where we are at about 3,000 feet, we're getting quite nice results from it. And we're getting some variety of character. It's not all burnt out, and we're getting nice results. So it is possible. But again, it's a matter of going into the vineyard and making the vineyard properly. Not a matter of going to a farmer and saying, look, I want you to grow a vineyard for me, and I'll come vintage and pick up whatever you've grown for me. We have to go here, and that's what winemakers in Israel are doing. Winemakers are going, they're paying attention to the growing practices, they're paying attention to the viticulture practices, and they're growing grapes that are suitable for what they want. There's a lot of research and development going into it. A lot of the big wineries are investing vast fortunes in ensuring that the product coming from their vineyards is top quality.
It used to be said that Israeli wine was made by winemakers. Now it's not just more voguish, but I think more accurate to say that the winemakers are respecting the places the grapes are coming from and letting the vineyards speak more clearly. Do you think that's true?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, certainly in my experience, when we started the winery 18 years ago, we were making the best of the product that we got from the vineyards. And slowly we began planting our own vineyards, planting our own materials. And I'm seeing that there is certainly less intervention, certainly less winemaking intervention in the past 4 or 5 years. And I would imagine that it's exactly the same with the other wineries in Israel than there was 10 to 15 years ago. Absolutely. We are reaping the grapes that we want to get.
What's the biggest change in the way that you make wine in Dalton from inception to now?
The biggest change is that the winemaker is in the vineyards almost constantly for about 2 months before winter. That's a big investment. It's hard work as well, because they're quite spread out. But that's the most important change that I've seen.
How problematic is it from a position of perception to not have a native grape, an indigenous grape, either white or red, hanging
I think it would be nice, and there are certainly moves afoot and certain research going into discovering the natural indigenous varieties of grapes in Israel. It would be nice to plant. Greece has them, Turkey has them. They're all funny sounding varieties, but they all taste delicious. I don't see why Israel can't have that as well. But I also don't see a problem with using varietals that aren't indigenous to the country, because many other countries around the world are using non-indigenous varieties and are very successful at it.
So if you were to look into your grape-stained crystal ball and say or predict what grapes would be displacing the current grapes right now that are most widely planted, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, what would you see as taking the next wave of wine to a higher plane of deliciousness?
I think that the current varieties that we have will remain. I think there will be much more attention paid to getting smaller yields in the vineyards and getting the grapes that were grown at 20 tons per hectare down to 10 tons per hectare to 5 tons per hectare, and getting the quality that that the vineyards were destined to produce, which for commercial reasons in the past never happened.
One of the knocks on Israeli wine is that it's too red heavy. There's not enough good white wine coming out of Israel, and that the reds tend to be too alcoholic and perhaps low in acid. Do you agree?
I think the Israeli market was dominated by, the Israeli wine producers were dominated by the market in which they played. And traditionally the demand for Israeli whites was at about 20%, 20-25%. As we're seeing the market shift, and we're seeing it shift in Israel and we're seeing it shift abroad, as we see the market shift, we are planting more white varieties. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, it'll take us 5 years until you see those wines. Maybe 4 years to plant, and then another year to get it into the bottle. And it takes time. You've got to be incredibly patient to be in this business.
Do you think there is an opportunity there for taking grapes such as Viognier that you mentioned earlier, combining it with Chardonnay in ways that they never imagined in a place like the Rhone where Viognier comes from?
Well, I think you're beginning to see more imaginative blends in the blending rooms of many wineries. There are many wineries in Israel that are making really interesting blends, and I think a lot of them are out here today. And so yes, I mean we now make a Semillon Chardonnay Viognier blend, which is, I think, delicious, but I'm going to say that because I made it. But it's really interesting and really good, and bringing on new dimensions. We're not burdened by the laws of terroir and the laws of appellations, as so many countries in Europe are burdened with.
So innovation, you're able to play and mix and match and do things that other people who are historically or regulatorily limited can't do.
Correct, and we play around in the laboratory, and we see what goes well with what.
Can you teach me how to say laboratory? I never could master that, and it always sounds better with an English accent, as most things do. The Israeli wine industry has been historically dominated by major players, a handful of major players. Do you think that dominance inhibits innovation, or have the small garagistes and the boutique wineries that have come up in the last 10 to 15 years been able to